In this video, you will learn the basic function of adverb clauses. An adverb clause is a subordinate clause that modifies a verb, an adjective, or an adverb. In other words, an adverb clause is a word group that performs the same function as a single word adverb. And just like adverbs, adverb clauses provide the following information about the words they modify. They can tell how much, when, where, why, to what extent, and under what conditions. These questions are meant to help us figure out what word is being modified. Try not to get too caught up in deciding between one question or another. They're meant to be tools rather than important parts of the identification process themselves. Subordinating conjunctions are important to adverb clauses. Adverb clauses are introduced by subordinating conjunctions. These are words that show the relationship between the adverb clause and the word or words that the clause modifies. These are your most common subordinating conjunctions. Again, this is not an exhaustive list. This isn't all of the subordinating conjunctions, but these are the most commonly used. After, although, as if, as long as soon as though, because, before, even though, if, in order that, once, provided that, since, so that, than, though, unless, until, when, whenever, where, wherever, whether, while, and why. Many of the words that are subordinating conjunctions can also function as prepositions. If the word group is a subordinate clause, it will contain both a subject and a verb. If the word group is a prep phrase, it will contain an object of a preposition. So let's look at these two contrasting examples, both using the word before. In the first example, before he took a bath, Josh ate dinner. I find the word before, and I want to know what it's doing. So I look at the words that come after it, and I see that I have he and took. He is the subject, took is the verb. Since I have both, and then I have bath, a direct object. So since I have a subject and a verb, he took a bath, that could be a sentence itself. Before is introducing this. It's a clause, right? Because it has both a subject and a verb. So the word group is a subordinate clause. In the next sentence, Josh ate dinner before bath time. I again have the word before, and I need to figure out what it's doing in the sentence. Is it a subordinating conjunction, or is it a preposition? In this sentence, just like the previous one, I look at what comes after it. Now I only have one word, a noun. Since I only have one word, it really can't be the subject, because the subject would need a verb after it. That's an indication that this noun is actually functioning as the object of a preposition, and in this sentence, before is a preposition. Punctuation and adverb clauses. Here is your general rule. When the adverb clause comes at the beginning of the sentence, set it off from the rest of the sentence with a comma. Because we had not studied the material, we did not perform well on the test. The main clause is we did not perform well on the test. The reason that we would set the introductory subordinate clause off from the rest of the sentence with a comma is that it really is serving as an introductory element to the sentence. We're delaying approach to the main clause. And then a signal, such as a comma, can help a reader understand and know, okay, I'm starting the main clause now, we did not perform well. Because our typical sentence pattern is subject, verb, and then the rest of the sentence. So whenever I change that pattern by having some kind of introductory element, it really does help a reader process the sentence more easily when the introductory element is set off from the rest of the sentence with a comma. When the adverb clause comes after the main clause, you don't need to set it off from the rest of the sentence with a comma. So we'll see the same sentence written the other way. We did not perform well on the test because we had not studied the material. This is our typical sentence pattern, subject, verb, and then all of our complement information. Since I'm not delaying approach to the main clause, I don't really need the comma there. Sometimes it is necessary or desirable to use a comma between these two clauses when the second clause is showing a main contrast. So maybe a sentence like, we did not perform well on the test even though we studied for hours. You wouldn't have to put a comma in that sentence, but you might want to, just to emphasize the contrast a little bit. The rules about punctuation with adverb clauses, again, are general guidelines, not necessarily hard and fast rules. Elliptical clauses. Sometimes part of a clause may be left out when its meaning can be clearly understood from the context of the sentence. Such a clause is called an elliptical clause. Here's an example. When writing an essay, you should incorporate textual evidence. In its fullest form, when you are writing an essay, you should incorporate textual evidence. I clearly have an introductory subordinate clause. But because the you are can be easily understood, I could write or say when writing an essay. That doesn't change the fact, though, that I have a subordinate clause. So you have to be careful with these. When you're reading or writing, you won't see those words there, and you may not know, do I need a comma, or what is this really functioning as? So ask yourself, could I or should I insert? Can I complete the clause in some way? Should I add in the subject or the verb? And is that going to help me figure out what's going on in this sentence? Here's another example, a very common example, in fact. Teal is prettier than green. Almost nobody says teal is prettier than green is pretty. Well, that's really what the sentence means. It's a clause of comparison. And grammatically, I have to have teal is prettier, teal is pretty, green is pretty. Since I'm comparing, I have teal is prettier than green. To finish the thought, I would say is pretty. It's not as important right now just in merely identifying the clauses, but it does become important when you're using pronouns and you have to determine the pronoun case. Very often, we run into difficulty with elliptical clauses, so it's really good to be aware that these exist and to start noticing patterns with elliptical clauses. So here are some practice sentences. For each of the sentences below, underline the adverb clause, circle the subordinating conjunction, and draw an arrow to the word being modified by the clause. Also add commas where necessary. Again, this is a good time to pause the video, complete the practice, restart the video when you're ready to hear the answers. Number 1, Sarah folded the laundry even though it was her turn to do the dishes. I think it's useful to start by looking for those subordinating conjunctions. You're always going to have those with adverb clauses. In this sentence, even though is my subordinating conjunction. The whole clause is even though it was her turn to do the dishes. Sarah folded the laundry could stand by itself as a sentence. So then we need to figure out, okay, what is this clause doing? What word is it modifying? Here is where those adverb questions can be helpful, but don't get stuck over which question to use. For me, this clause is kind of telling us why she folded the laundry. Some of you might see it as when she folded the laundry, how she folded the laundry. It doesn't really matter exactly which question you're using as long as you're able to figure out that this clause is all really telling us more about the folding. So it modifies the word folded. In this sentence, we don't need any commas because the main clause comes in the beginning of the sentence. You could put a comma after laundry if you wanted to emphasize the contrast and create a little bit more pause there, but it's really not necessary. And I tend to err on the side of fewer commas. Less is more. Number 2, because I couldn't stop eating the ice cream, I got a stomach ache. Because is probably your most commonly used subordinating conjunction, here introducing the clause, because I couldn't stop eating the ice cream. I could take because away, I couldn't stop eating the ice cream, and I have a complete sentence. That's really what happens with these subordinate clauses. Those clauses could be sentences by themselves, but it is the presence of the subordinating conjunction that makes it so that that sentence cannot stand by itself anymore. Here, you do have to put a comma after the clause, because I couldn't stop eating the ice cream, since it introduces the sentence. A long introductory element like that really requires a comma. the whole clause, because I couldn't stop eating the ice cream, I got a stomachache. It modifies the word got. It tells us why we got a stomachache. Number 3 is an example of an elliptical clause. Carrie likes cookies more than John. Than John is the partial elliptical clause. Than is a subordinating conjunction. And this clause really tells us how she likes the cookies more. So it's really modifying the adjective more. Now, how we complete the clause here depends on the meaning of the sentence. And there's really 2 ways we could write this sentence. It could say Carrie likes cookies more than she likes John, which may be true, or maybe, probably more likely, hopefully for John, it's that Carrie likes cookies more than John likes cookies. So if the meaning is at all going to be unclear, you really should complete that clause to make sure that your readers understand what it is you're trying to say.